Out.
Oh, I see
Yes.
it.
There you go, everybody.
That's great. More people coming. Welcome, everyone. I am so happy to be here tonight. I'm so glad to see everyone. I really, really am. It's these meetings every month are just a great shot in the arm. And, you know, for all of us, it's so nice to be together, even if it's virtual. And hopefully very soon we will be together in person. I do know that, you know, this coming month we've got our oyster roast. So that's an opportunity to be outside and in person. And we also have outings. So we will get right to that. I am Christine Von Collins. I'm the chair of the local Sierra Club, which is Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester counties, and Colleton, sorry. And we've got a bunch of our leadership on the call tonight. I saw Pat and Star and Laura and Nina. Alec Cooley is on here too. He's actually going to be presenting slides. Bill, one of our outings leaders, is on here as well. He's going to help with slides. I have to keep moving this around. Okay. Outings. I am going to let Star take it away to talk about the outings, and Bill's on the line. He might want to talk about his.
So on February 19th, Bill can tell you about this hike at the Gumby unit of the Ace Basin. Bill, do you want to do that? Okay, well, so Bill's going to go down to the Ace Basin National Wildlife Refuge, and there's a unit called the Gumby unit, and you'll be walking around there. It's one of the most beautiful places on the planet, and you will enjoy yourself immensely. On the 5th and 6th, this has been rescheduled. We'll go birding and biking and camping and hiking at the Santee Coastal Reserve. You can come up on Saturday or Sunday. Kind of a more ambitious one. On the 19th, we'll do about 30 miles on the Lake Moultrie passage of the Palmetto Trail. This is an off-road bicycling trip extraordinary with great beauty and lots of alligators, and spring will be springing and it'll be wonderful. And then the following weekend, Bill Turner will take us down to the Bear Island Wildlife Management Area for some off-road cycling down there. And you can see our outings at the indicated web link there, and you can sign up automatically if you would like to. And the picture is sea oats taken in August or maybe early September on DeVille Bank. So that's what we have coming up at the moment.
And we just had an outing to, oh, it's a Huntington Beach State Park. How many different birds did we see, Star?
Well, we wound up seeing 68 different species while we were up there. We got up there just after the sun came up. Well, just after, it was about 10 o'clock. But anyway, the sun was coming out and it was melting all the ice. This was right after the ice storm. And the ice was melting off the trees. And that was a wonderful place to be, with the ice falling off the trees on our heads and so on. And then a few minutes later, it was warmed up. It warmed up to maybe 50 during the day, which made it absolutely stunningly beautiful for walking. We saw cormorants diving, and we saw eared grebes rather, and lots of other birds as well. It was a wonderful time with a truly amazing group of people who had a really fun time.
Cool. I'm so excited. I had a great time, and I'm so excited about all these outings coming up, and hope to see as many people as possible. All right, next month, we are going to be talking about horseshoe crabs next month, because I don't know about you all, but we have a lot of questions, and we're ready to learn more about what's going on with the horseshoe crabs in our state, and we want to help in any way that we can to preserve the population of horseshoe crabs in our state, because you know, it's important to protect them in and of themselves, but they are they breed here and they lay their eggs, and those eggs are important food for I think it's the red knot bird that is just coming through, and they need that extra fuel to continue their migration. And if the crabs aren't there, then the red knots will also suffer. And of course, when any species suffer, we suffer. So we really want to learn more. Tonight we're going to be talking about Canary Islands. We're going to be talking about Daniel Island. There's a shorebird rookery over there that Yvonne's going to share with us. And we're also going to have some pictures from Alaska. That was a trip that Yvonne went on. And if we have any time, we might get a little bit of Spain and Portugal in there. So let's get right to it. I am going to stop sharing.
This me? We're ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I moved to Daniel Island 25 years ago. And I was the 8th house sold on Daniel Island, so I watched it really develop. And it's a peninsula much in the shape and fashion as Charleston's peninsula, but it has many different features that Charleston no longer has. For instance, as you'll notice around here, there's lots of marsh grasses and oaks of small trees, and not a lot of docks shooting off into Wando River. And so, as it happens, now, Laura, can you point to this? Yes, you're pointing to it. You see this little thing right here? This is a stormwater runoff, and right behind that is my apartments. My apartments are all in that section right there, and I'm on the corner, and I can see this pond from my porch. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that it's surrounded on 3 kinds by trees. There's a culvert that goes under the side, and so what happened is, now can we advance to the next one? And so this is what it looks like from my porch, okay? And I'm looking down, and this is fine, Laura, this is good. I'm looking at my porch, and here's the pond. And you can see how it has the trees surrounding all the area. And then next, please. And here's another view of it. Now, I did take this with my phone. Taking bird pictures really, and here, one of the reasons why it's so well preserved, keeping people and dogs out of this pond water, is these lovely alligators. They can, I've actually seen them grab one of these white birds by the leg and drag it underwater. And I felt so sorry for it, because it must have been like 3 ounces of food, and all the rest of it was, beak, bone, and feathers. But so here's a cormorant, and this is a great white egret, and they come in large numbers to this one place. Now, the reason I think that this is really working, when I was trying to take pictures, I tried to get in close. I put a foot into the little canopy, and then here's this little hawk sitting up here. I think it's just a magnet for local wildlife. One more over. Next one. And you can see these are white ibises here going along the edge. Next. And I took this just yesterday, or a few days ago. Look at these great blue herons standing up on their nest. And now, of course, it's wintertime, so there's not a whole lot of leaves and everything like that. But I don't know if they're here because we've had a recent warm time or not. But this is where they populate. Next, please. And here I was walking my dogs over in the park, and here's a great blue heron, juvenile, and he's just standing there. They get so used to people and everything, you can get really close to them. And this is another picture of a great blue grooming, standing on his nest. Looks like a scabby bunch of little twigs and everything, but that's what they raise their young in. And from this, I can look out to the south. This is south, and watch the sun come up, and across from the east, and highlights are just really beautiful. Next, please. Now, this is what the rookery looks like most of the time. We have birds all through here in the trees, nesting. In the morning, what you'll do is there's a big flutter and everybody lifts off and goes off to feeding, because of those marshes and rivers and areas. And that's where they go off to feed. And then they return here. Next, please. And they hang out. Now, here's a little cormorant. And I can always tell when it's fishing because the mullet are all jumping around when that's swimming underwater. There's a great blue and then there's a great white egret. Next. And so I tried to get close to the rookery, okay, and take pictures much better. But as soon as I stepped into the little forested area and my foot crunched on a bunch of leaves and little branches, the birds just jumped off and flew away. So I have to take these pictures from afar. But this is what it looks like. Now you'll notice the little birds, little white things, there's a nice sandy ring that they can stand on and walk around. Now when the birds, little babies, fledge, okay, they fly right over to that little ledge and then they stand around there and say, oh, really nice. I like it here. Okay. And then, but they just said, now what's next? And then somebody goes and sees a little fish and dives for it. And all their little heads go, and so that they start wandering off and feeding as if it's the brand new thing that they never knew before. And see, I catch them when they're flying about here. And I just enjoy this rookery fabulously. Mostly I can just take these pictures right off my porch. And here they are again, standing along the edge. And now you could see the guano all on the leaves and everything for the young birds, because this is just after they fledged and flown off to the edge. I haven't seen any more alligators. Oh yeah, and then sunsets are some kind of beautiful. Couldn't help it. And then now here are white ibis. Not very white. They're actually wearing their brown baby clothes because on the nest they don't want to be white. But they haven't shed. And so what the first thing they do is they start walking around the pond, poking and finding food and whatnot. And just another, I can't help myself. Oh, that picture was showing that with all that guano, there's lots of duckweed and other kinds of green stuff that can actually spread all over. I think it feeds the fish, so it's not really too bad. But that's all there from the guano from the rookery. And next. And see, 526 is, can you see it back through there? It's right practically over this. But it's muffled by the noise, and it's a secluded place so that the wildlife feel very comfortable here. I think they can screen out the highway noise. Here's another picture of the birds. And you can see all the different kinds. There's an ibis and great whites, snowy egrets, an ibis up in the tree. So it's just really lots of fun. I spend enough time watching these. And here okay, and then it's fine. And here's a young one, and they go fishing here all the time, walking along the edge. And they don't want to go out otherwise because the alligators. And see, I catch them here flying around. And on different days with different things going on. And you see, it's just a real magnet for the wildlife to keep coming here. Now, these are the white ibis that were the fledglings that were brown. They're now wearing their white Sunday suits where they wander around. Now, what they're doing here in this circle might seem strange, but we had a really heavy rain and it's saturated in inches. And all the poor little earthworms and other creatures that live in the ground, they were going to drown, so they come up. I just find them, feed off of them. And then, so I caught some little pictures of the great white heron walking around, and I think that's it. But I was just saying, it's a really wonderful, special thing, serendipitously, that this rainwater retention pond had the features necessary to invite the wild to live
Thank you. That was beautiful.
there. Thank you.
Great job, Yvonne.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was great. I just love that rookery. It's so beautiful, and it's just right there. It's an
know.
urban rookery.
Now this is Alaska. Are we doing Alaska next?
I guess we are. If they're up, we can go ahead and do that.
And what we can do is we can zip through these because, you know, I'm getting old and I have little infirmaries and been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So, I mean, forgetting is the bane of my life. But the last place I wanted to go in the world was go to Alaska. And so my daughter found this trip on the Canine Peninsula with this group. And so we flew there and spent 10 days wandering around. And I had never been up. I've been to the Alps and other places, but Alaska was really wonderful. And so here, what we did is we hiked up to this actual glacier that's running off here. Now, when the glacier melts, it's just a rush of water. It looks like it might be a little stream, but it's really loud. I mean, you can hardly talk over the noise of the glacier water running. Pop. I'm ready. Can I do it? Okay. Oh, now, and this is me, and this is the kind of accommodations that they had there. It was very low impact on the environment, and they actually worked with a council of Native Americans, you know, the Indians that have property. And so what they did is they built these little cabins from the wood taken in the footprint where they were going to put them, and they milled them and put them together here. And with trying to not disturb the natural environment very much at all. And they had natural gas and battery lighting, so it was just really fantastical. Next. And now we went to one place, and this is where fishing camp, where all the guys come with their hooks to get the salmon, and salmon was running. I didn't get good pictures because we were just all running around and everything, but the eagles were there by the dozens, and they had hanging from the trees all the little skeletons of the picked apart salmon. And then here's where you see this is the glacier melt, and it's rushing through there, making this horrendous big noise. It was really frightening. But what they had these lodges with the heat in them, the sweat lodge, so people would go get sweaty and go jump in the melt. And of course, I wouldn't do that. That's crazy. And while we went on 3 different places here, now this is a beautiful shot of the beach, and we had come across this water from those mountains there. And I tell you, because you know it's so pollution free and beautiful that the shots are just gorgeous from in the natural landscapes. And next. Now, also, I was trying to hike up to the tree line here, but you don't notice that there's all these roots and everything that grab your feet and throw you to the ground. I tried to walk up to the tree line, but I had to turn back. It was too much for me. But you see how lush and beautiful it is here, and how this is the trail we were going on. This is the way it is, undisturbed. Next. Here's some driftwood that it was beautiful stuff. Tacked up to the building where we had our meals. I just thought it was beautiful. And here's rushing water and another scape that was just really, and this is also really from glacier melt. Next. And here's my daughter and I smiling really big. We had such a blast. And then here's another picture, and you can see the propane tanks in here, and how they're nestled in and connected by boardwalks, and you're not allowed to go traipsing around on the ground, harming the environment, and scaring birds and rabbits and other things. Now, we did get up and hike around some places now. This is a view down to the water, And it was just magnificently beautiful with the snow on the mountains. And we hiked all through this area, and I was mesmerized with it. Another picture. And you see how there's not trails or roads or anything. This is real wilderness area. And there's black bears. At this time of year, they're really trying to beef up. And they're out here grazing, eating flowers and grasses. And here's a picture through the branches. And next. Another one, I just couldn't help myself. I took all these pictures. And there, Michelle and I are sitting on by the glacier melt going by. We just had a blast there. It was wonderful fun. And then we went to another area. This was, I'm forgetting, maybe I'll remember what the name is. But here is where the ocean comes in. And this is where whales can be seen, shorebirds, puffins. I've always been trying to chase puffins all over the world and miss them. But this time I really did get to see them, although my pictures are lousy. Next. And so here's, we're on a big old boat and we're just going around this. We didn't get close enough to get glacier melt. It's really, it's not clear. You see how blue shaded this is, because there's all kinds of minerals and other things that have got washed after when the glacier goes along and picks up a lot of stuff, and then it runs through the rocks and everything. Let's go next. So here's what it looks like. Is as it's coming down, and you can see the boat here right at the bottom, how small it is. And next. They're huge. And when you're up here and listening to their rumbling and crackling and screaming as these huge things move across the land, I wouldn't want to be at the edge there where you could get inundated by them. Look at that deep blue color. See, that's why I don't think they're crystal clear when they melt. And see all that dark stuff? And see, here's the boat again to give you a sense of scale. And see, this little area had glaciers just all around it, feeding it into the water. And a little waterfall. And another black bear out here grazing on green stuff. I didn't realize that they were also vegetarians. They'll eat anything to put on weight. And now here's a little driftwood that is in place and wasn't taken off to hammer it on a building. I thought it was really gorgeous. This is a lily, but it's dark. And it's for carrion feeders. And so I bent down to sniff this, and it reeked of dead deer. It was rotting meat. And so they get the flies and everything to fertilize it. But it was really pretty interesting. I never saw this before. Now, one of these lodges we stayed, there was a retiree from the university who was a botanist, and he took us off through the woods very carefully, and every few steps would stop and pick up something or point out something or talk about the mosses or the trees or the ferns or the flowers. And he just obviously really loved what he was doing, and we had a wonderful time walking through these woods. It was the only time we were able to take off by ourselves. And now these longboats, they are as not as the Indians had them, but they're modern versions. And they would take us for paddling trips all along these wonderful little glacier ponds. Here's Michelle and I laughing and carrying on in front of a glacier. We were smiling almost all the time. And this is a picture from my cabin. This is what it looked like. I think this is the last one. And this is what we had before. Oh no, we were on our walk through more of the forest, this big fallen tree, and he was describing how about the sunlight finally got down to the forest floor and all these plants come rising up. Next. So and see how it have all these marshlands, because when it rains, it gets very wet, and animals, all manner of animals come here to feed off the grasses. Next one, There we are getting ready to go paddling. And look at this sky. It's just really amazing. Next. And I couldn't help myself whenever I was outdoors. I was taking, go ahead, I'm taking pictures of this lovely, look at the clarity. Little puffs, each little peak has a puff from the condensation of the glaciers. Now, here's my picture of puffins. Forgive me. This is the best I could do. And did you know those beautiful, colorful beaks that they have? They are only for mating season. After mating season, they fall off. Who knew? Now, the last thing we did is instead of flying back to Anchorage, we took the train. This train has the ceilings. So we spent about 4 or 5 hours winding through the mountains, and we saw all manner of elk and with like a doe with her fawn and other kinds of wonderful things. And they had wonderful meals. Look at the size of that ice on that mountain. And so it was wonderful. And we got back to Anchorage. The only bad part about the trip was the long flight home. But that's it for me.
Yvonne, that was fabulous.
Yeah, that's spectacular scenery.
It's just you just follow your face into it,
Yeah, I just, what struck me was how green it was. So that was summertime. What month was
Yes,
that?
right, June.
Okay. Yeah, that and the mosses and it looked like, gosh, I mean it could have been I don't know, a
Equatorial
forest down and and near the equator.
burns and everything, because I think in those protected areas they don't really freeze down and kill it.
Yvonne, did they talk about having problems with the glaciers receding excessively with climate change?
They are receding, but they're so big. I mean, they're colossal, and like I was there and the streams are still going and the salmon still run, okay, all the way up and lay their eggs. So as long as that's continuing to happen, they're not really concerned because, it still snows up there. There's plenty of snow and it piles up. There's some recession and everything, but there's just, what is it, centuries, eons of time to accumulate.
Okay, good.
And it's at high altitude, so it's not, the sun bears down on, but it's not like being along the shore.
All right, thank you.
May I say something?
Sure.
I wanted to compliment Yvonne on her beautiful pictures and her beautiful voice. It's such a beautiful narration. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
And Linda, I know Linda had a bunch of comments in the chat. And she was wondering if you drank the glacier melt water, but I think you said you didn't.
No, well, you could see how when the glacier goes across the ground, and it picks up, it's not only bare dirt and everything like that, but plants and twigs and bushes and everything. So it has this tremendous amount of stuff in the frozen part. And then it goes through the ground and gravel and down the streams. And, that's not always clear. So I would think that it might be not injurious to your health to drink. Maybe you could taste it, but it might have contaminants in it that could cause problems.
Good, yeah, it could be what, millions of years old or something.
That's right.
Who knows
The
what's in
bacteria
it?
still, can come alive.
You'll be drinking some creature from the Triassic or something. All right. So thank you again for both Alaska and right here at home, right here in the Low Country.
Yeah.
We are going to turn our attention to near the tropics. We're going to go off to the Canary Islands, which are off the coast of Africa, and they are so somehow I got muted. Alec
Okay.
Cooley, my
We
husband.
can hear you now.
All right, so this is Alec Cooley with the beard right here, and that's me in the middle, and Bill Turner. We spent a couple of weeks in the a week in the Canary Islands, and Alec is going to tell you all about that.
I'm going to collaboratively share all about that along with Bill and Christine.
He wants us to ad lib.
I'm not on the hook for the whole thing, but I'll start off and sort of kick off some background on our trip. This was last September. This was our chance during that brief window before Omicron started to close things back down again. But we did a 2-week trip, as Christine said, flew into Madrid, and we were in Madrid for just a day. Let's see, here we go. Before we turned around the next day and we flew to the Canary Islands, which you can see here. This gives you a little bit of sense of the location. It's right off the coast of Morocco and Mauritania. And these are Spanish. The islands actually are part of the Spanish nationality, and these have been going back. The Spanish have used these islands going back, I think, to the 1500s, even before that. When the explorers would leave, the Spanish explorers would leave to explore the world, this was typically the launching point. So Christopher Columbus actually came through here first because it was the furthest west point before you wandered off across the Atlantic Ocean. So there are 7 different islands in the chains. We went to these 2 primary ones, La Palma and Tenerife. We caught a flight out of the third one on the right, Gran Canaria, but that was more or less just for a single evening. And I'll be honest, we really didn't have a whole lot of expectations. What is in the Canary Islands? What kind of climate? I mean, there are a lot of questions that we really didn't know before we jumped in, but we learned that it was beautiful. So this is just a quick overview of La Palma, the first island we came to. All of the Canary Islands are more or less all entirely volcanic in nature. And as you can see here, you're looking at basically the top end of the island, the big caldera, the main one, but there are all sorts of smaller ones. So we caught a plane and we got there, and this was the first day hike we went to. I'll be honest, I'm not good with names, so I'm going to ask Christine and Bill to jump in if you remember the names of where this was. This was the more or less the first day.
This was a hike to a place called Cascada de Colors, I believe.
Yep. And so we went for a beautiful hike up this creek. And this was kind of the end point we got to. This little artificial dam, which it was kind of nice looking, but this was on lots of tourist brochures, and it never really struck me why this was such an iconic spot. But folks seemed to like it, and it was definitely pretty. You can see here there was all this orange, the moss. It's all orange from the minerals that were leaching up from the ground. Bill, Christine, if you want to add anything all to this one?
Someone's asking if it's travertine. I think that, this was a wall that someone created to dam up water. And I know along the path going to and from, we saw some sort of water station where they were pumping water. I don't know where they were pumping it to. So it may have been that they were collecting water here to take it into the towns. So what you see is just the buildup of minerals over time over this dam.
Yep. So it was a pretty spot. This was just to give you a little flavor of the architecture. This was both La Palma and Tenerife. I think there was even a third island where the main town on the island happens to be called Santa Cruz, which doesn't lead to any confusion, but this was the Santa Cruz on La Palma, And it gives you a flavor that this is definitely a town that goes back 300 or 400 years. Some more of the architecture. In general, I would say you kind of felt like you were in Spain. The folks you saw around and all, it definitely felt like a Spanish town. This was a reproduction of one of Christopher Columbus's boats. I can't remember which one. And there's a little museum inside of there, but this gives you a little bit of scale of just how big the boat was. And it's obviously it's commemorating that this was sort of the last, I believe the last point on the eastern side of the Atlantic before Columbus headed off across the for the Americas.
And right, they came here and they stayed for months to, get the supplies they needed for their journey across the Atlantic. And Alex said, just to show you how big the boat was or the size of the boat, to me, this boat was tiny to go across the Atlantic for the maiden voyage of, Europeans. So that's my take on it. I would have been scared crossing the Atlantic in that thing.
Definitely. So then the next day we jumped in the car and we earlier I showed you the map that showed that the caldera, the main caldera, and we jumped in the car and we drove all the way up through the mist and the fog till we got up to the top, where we had this beautiful view. And this is looking down the spine of the island. And you realize that's kind of the primary feature, certainly on this island, was pine trees. That wasn't universal. Each island it's a little bit of a unique ecosystem, but pine trees were a defining feature of La Palma.
And I'll say one more thing about the pine trees. The pine trees on these islands grew up with fire. So they're a particular kind of pine tree that it's not impervious to fire, but they definitely can withstand more fire than your average pine tree.
Yep. So this is at the very top of that main caldera, which again is long dormant. I think prior to our trip, there had been an eruption, I think around 1970, and before that, the most recent eruption had been, I think, in the 1600s. So this is all very old, ancient, yet it is still active, potentially for volcanoes. This is an area where there's a lot of observing of the night sky. So there were whole on the top of the mountain was these observatories. And they had these mirror antenna sending signals up into the sky. So we spent the day just hiking up along the top here of the caldera. And we stopped for lunch at this spot where, like many tour spots, you had animals that were very friendly and more than happy to pick up after you. In this case, what wasn't so much the crows as it was the lizards. If you look here, you can see on Christine's lap, there's a lizard. They were swarming. There were dozens of lizards that within 2 minutes of sitting down were all over you. This is back down by the water, just showing you some of the shoreline here. We stayed in a resort. One of the nice things during a pandemic is that you can get hotels in a place like this for substantially cheaper. So we were able to stay at a pretty nice place. It was us and a lot of German tourists. I'm not sure if we saw any Americans all in the Canary Islands. If we did, it was incidental. It was mostly Northern Europeans who we saw here. So this was maybe the third or fourth day we went for a hike up here. I started out on this hike and then I had to turn back because of an issue I had with my leg. But this, Christine, do you want to talk about the next few days or the next few slides here?
Sure. Yeah, this is the Ruta de los Volcanos. And it's about a 13-mile hike. And like Alex said, Bill and I went on this hike mostly. It starts off in this lush, thick pine forest. Then it comes out and you're on top of the world again. This is looking down over I think that was the eastern, or no, the western side of the island towards the ocean.
Yep. You can see that you can see some of the, down here, all those white patches are banana farming, which was one of the big crops there. And we'll have a photo in a second. But all of these are giant, tarps covering up bananas.
And I do want to say, keep your eye on this, keep your mind on this location for a photo we have later. There, you can see there's this dark swath of land across in the middle, and that is an old lava flow. So just keep that in mind.
And these are all communities. These are all towns along here. While Christine and Bill were hiking, I got in the car and I drove down and did this whole drive through here and met them at the trailhead at the end of the day.
So we started seeing the craters, and we're just going to go through a series of craters here and show you just the different types. They look vastly different. This one, I just couldn't stop looking down into that caldera. It's cold, it's not hot, but it looks like it was still on fire. It's amazing. This is another caldera. It's very different than the last two, but clearly there was volcanic activity there.
Yep. So on your hike, as you went down the spine, you passed roughly how many of these sort of smaller little pocket calderas would you say?
I didn't count them all. I don't know. They're countless. You keep passing them. They're on the left, on the right, and in front of you. We were walking straight towards this one. It just, wow. It's just so stark out there, but the colors are beautiful. Those trees are super cool to look at. They're in all different shapes and sizes and different, some of them are little tiny babies, and they're just so different than our pine trees. Here's another caldera. And if you went on the far side of that, you'd be able to look down and see the ocean.
Yep.
This is the end. So this is what you end up with. You come to this small town at the edge of this series of volcanoes. But if you look just past the town, there are two more calderas. So what happens is, these islands form over a hot spot in the earth, and the hot spot, comes up and it makes an island, but they're moving all the time. So the hot spot moves, and that's why these islands end up being very long and thin, and why the volcanoes just kind of seem to walk across the island, because the island is moving away from the hot spot.
There was a great little bar here where I was able to get a beer while I waited for them at the end of the day. It was very enjoyable. And then afterward, we all jumped back in the car, and then we headed down to the beach. And you can see a little bit closer here what the same banana, I don't know if you would call them orchards.
Well, it's kind of like a farm, plantations or farms.
Yeah.
Or...
Yep. It shows you up close as we came down to the water line. And we found this wonderful little cove here where we went, jumped in the water, and it was a great way to end off the day, nice and refreshing, before we drove back across the island to where we were staying.
Yeah, when you get in the water, the sand is very nice. It's smooth, it's beautiful, but when you get in the water, there are rocks, and they're really big rocks. So you have to be kind of careful when you're in there, and you want to wear your shoes when you're getting in the water.
Yep. So this was, I think this was from here, we took off. Oh, before we took off. So
No.
this is a photo of exactly where we were 5 or 6 days later. Some of you may have seen that it was the big headlines, if you were paying attention, from September all the way through December, I believe this volcano went off. And so this is the first volcanic eruption in 50 years. And this gives you a sense of the scale.
And it wasn't even a week later. So Bill and I walked right past there and Alec drove right through there. So, you know, we were within days of that happening. And we felt ripped off.
We missed out, man.
We missed out. The inhabitants did have time to get out of their houses and get away. Like a day or two before the volcano erupted, the earthquakes started happening, and many of them. So they knew from, you know, historical events that they had to leave. So they did.
Yeah, but this volcano destroyed well over 1,000 homes. All in that area. When that photo we showed earlier of that plane with the homes down on it and the old historic lava flow. This is pretty much the exact same spot where this was erupting for a good solid 3 months. And it just, I think in December is when it finally stopped. But it gives you a sense of what it looks like now.
So we felt ripped off, but we definitely feel sorry for the people who live there. And, you know, they did lose their homes. They did lose their banana farms. They did lose their livelihoods. And we would love to go back someday and contribute again to the economy of that island somehow.
Yeah, that was a beautiful location. So then we hopped on a little puddle jumping plane. We flew to the next island, Tenerife. We were actually on Tenerife when, or actually, I think we had just arrived back in Madrid, like the day after we arrived back is when the volcano erupted. But this shows you Tenerife, which is a much different environment. As I was saying earlier, you don't see any pine trees here. There weren't a lot of trees in general. It was a much more of a stark, deserty kind of environment.
And the pictures are kind of cloudy because there was, I believe, a sandstorm in Africa. So
That's
that
right.
is why, even a little
hazy.
bit on La Palma, it was a little bit hazy, but the sand was definitely blowing across the Atlantic. And usually that sand ends up, I think, in South America.
Yep. So all these islands are all volcanic, as we've been saying, and there's just more evidence of historic, and these are hundreds of year old flows here that you're seeing the evidence of.
And this just shows how long it takes plant life to come back after an eruption. And sometimes it's, it could be, it depends. I don't know, it depends on exactly 100%, but I do know it takes a long time for plant life to come back.
Yep. We were able to stay in a nice place here. Shared a couple days with lots of German tourists, and it was nice at the end of a hike to be able to jump into a pool and relax a little bit. This was a different hike, a different day we did, again on Tenerife. And again, I'm challenged to remember what the name of this location was. It was just outside of the Santa Cruz town on Tenerife, as I recall.
Was the mountain called Teed, or is it this place? Oh no, it was this place. Oh yeah, I remember that. Okay.
If Bill were on the line, he's always good with remembering these, but I think Bill lost his internet connection, so he's not with us.
Okay.
But the thing that really struck me as we were walking along here is you kind of feel like you're on Hawaii. It has kind of that same stark geology dropping you down to the waterline, except it's dry. As you can tell, there's no lushness here. It's all dry cactus, etc. End of this hike, we came down and again, jumped into the ocean and swam a little bit. You can see down here is Bill's, and I'm sitting over here in can't really call it a beach, but on the rocks. It was a nice day. And then we're getting towards the end. This is just the town of Santa Cruz has had some this. I think it's a theater or an opera house, but pretty interesting architecture. It was noteworthy.
I think that town was Baja Mar.
Bahamar, okay. And at the end of our time in Tenerife, we jumped onto this giant ferry and we went over to Gran Canaria, which was the third big island. And then that's where we caught our flight out. The next day back Madrid was from that island. So this is the end of our Canary Islands. I know we're coming up towards 8 if we're going to call it good now, or if we want to go a little further with some of the Spanish Portuguese photos.
You want to just show a few?
Yeah.
Show the Spanish Portuguese, yes.
Okay.
So for those of you who want to stick around, we'll keep going. So we were there for I can't remember, 2 or 3 weeks. But this was the second portion of the trip. We flew into Madrid, and you can kind of see we sort of did this trail here through the town of Avila, Salamanca, Caceres, Merida, across the border into Portugal, the town of Evora, Lisbon, and then we drove up to Porto. And we didn't do a comprehensive set of photos for all these towns, but we just have some highlights that we can take you through, and we'll sort of start in order with the town of Avila, which is I think I read somewhere that was the best preserved, entirely still original fortifications surrounding the entire town. So you can get a sense that it's the fortifications are beautiful. The town, yeah, it was okay. But the fortifications, wow. Again, it's just going to give you a sense of just how well preserved and how magnificent they are.
Well, you know, standing on the wall, you really do get an idea of, wow, what it must have been like to live in a fortified town. It's incredible.
This was Salamanca, which was a little bit of a sleeper. I don't think I think I've heard of it, but the guy said it was worth going to, and I think this was sort of ended up being a standout place that we hadn't really expected to impress us, but really did in a lot of ways. It was a beautiful town. This is a little fun vignette on this one. We pulled up and we were trying to figure out where our place we were staying was, and the guy the Airbnb person had told us to just pull up into this little square, and then you can walk across the square and you can find it. So I did that, and while Christina and Bill looked for our apartment, this policeman was sitting there and he said, "You can't be here. This is off limits. You know, this is essentially it's a pedestrian square. There is not supposed to be cars there, but the Airbnb host had been very specific that you can do it anyway." Any rate, the policeman, after trying to get us to leave several times in Spanish, finally conceded that we weren't going to go unless he showed us how to get to where we were going, because we weren't really sure. So this is all a long-winded way of saying that we got a police escort into Salamanca. And it was a magnificent town. So if you've been to Madrid and you've seen the the Plaza Mayor, which is kind of the main plaza in Madrid, this is the equivalent of that in the town of Salamanca. It's another grand central plaza where all the civic life for hundreds of years took place in this location. This is where the bullfights would happen. This is where kings, or I guess in this case, you didn't have royals being coronated here, but certainly anything major that happened, it happened in this plaza. And it's magnificent, and as you can tell, especially at night. Just showing you from the side, the daytime. Salamanca had some beautiful had a couple beautiful cathedrals.
And you can walk out on top of them.
Yep, yeah, we were able to go up onto the top up here on these sides. We could march around.
Get a good view of the town.
This was looking out of our Airbnb from our, we didn't really have a porch, but just from the window. And roughly down here is where the police had escorted us from.
It's a beautiful rainbow.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really nice. I just happened to look out the window and got that picture. It was just fabulous.
yeah. I'm a big soccer fan. I was excited because it's fun to actually watch soccer games at outside and with a crowd, and when you're in Europe, because it's much more festive than it is here in the US. And I was excited to actually be there because there were some big games that I think Barcelona or Real Madrid was playing, and no, it was Champions League at the time, but nobody was watching them. I walked around looking for bars or outdoor places where people would be watching them, and ended up not watching the game because I couldn't find it anywhere.
And it was a university town.
I know.
You would think that the students would be into that.
This is another town called Caceres. And Caceres is another town that I've never heard of, but the guide suggested we go there, and it was another pretty one. And this was really noteworthy just because we ended up having some incredible light. The skies were lit up, and the way it hit the historic buildings was really just magnificent.
This
So
town
this
had
was-
some really beautiful museums. They were small, they were intimate, fabulous artwork in one of the museums, just world-class artwork in this museum, actually. And there was a little house that had been made into a museum, and it was sort of a Muslim museum.
Well, that's
It was
right.
really interesting. It
It was-
had go ahead, Alec.
It was probably an 18th century Spanish home that was built onto the foundation level. Down was Roman era, or no, it was a Roman era structure, but then during the Moorish period, it had been decorated and done out and Moorish architecture. So it was you could only walk through the bottom basement level, but it was really beautiful.
And didn't they
Yeah.
have a sauna underneath it or something?
Yeah, they had a
It was like built in. It was the
800-year-old
coolest
sauna.
thing.
Yep. This is the Plaza Mayor in the town of Caceres. And then I'm skipping ahead past several towns, but this is this is one of the last towns we visited, which is Porto. So if you're familiar at all with Portugal, most folks are familiar with Lisbon. We had a good time there, and then we turned north and drove up to Porto, which is kind of the second city. It's the Chicago to New York, as it were. And Porto, I wanted to focus on this mostly just because a lot of folks are more familiar with Lisbon, which is a beautiful town, but we wanted to just highlight Porto, which is a really magnificent town too. And you have this big iconic bridge here, which is unique because it has, you can see on the top, this is a train. So you got train level, and then down here, the double-decker bridge, we have the roadbed. And this is kind of the big feature looking down from the main part of the historic town. And I'm just going to acknowledge up front that I cheated. We didn't take all these photos. I snatched some of these from the web just because they better represent the town than what we captured on our phones. But this is the waterfront, so that the whole town is kind of up on a slope going up, or that the historic town is going up this slope. This is from the waterfront, and you can see down here on the old wharf is now the big tourist area, and this is looking down. So what I was just showing you is right down here, this wharf, where there are lots, it's all restaurants and tourist locations. But if you can handle being around a few people, it really is a beautiful spot.
And it's really good restaurants with fabulous, of course, port wine and regular wine and lots of good seafood if you're into that. And right above it, going up the hill, a lot of old historic buildings that you can tour. And we crossed this bridge to go on the other side. I don't know if you took pictures of the other side, but that's where they have the they're these buildings that you can go in and do wine tastings, and it's the port wine, and it's all the different houses that have been making the port wine for hundreds of years. So it's a lot of fun. And yeah, this is that's a gondola. You can take the gondola from up here all the way down to where those port wine houses are.
Yeah, which you can't, it's on this side of the river is where the port wine houses are. And but that's how, when you're
And
tired.
Eve actually named one of them Sandeman, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Sandeman is on that row of port houses. And what would happen is this Porto town is near the Douro Valley, and the Douro Valley is where all the grapes are grown. So all the grapes would be grown, and they'd be turned into port wine, and then it'd be stored in these warehouses along this river, and they'd get on ships and go around the world.
Yeah, well, let me just jump in for a second, because I was in Spain the same time you were there, but in a different part. But I went to the town of Jerez, which is sherry, and I went to the Sandeman bodega there. So they told us they had a place in Porto. So I was thinking about you guys. All right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We visited one and had a nice little flight of port. It was hard to finish all of that. It's very strong.
Yeah, you have to have a taste for sweet dessert wines, which up to a certain point we do, but not past that point.
Anyway, it was good. It was worth it.
We did a boat ride, just like an hour long, going up the river and then turning around and coming back down again. But that was I always those kind of experiences can be a little touristy, but I always enjoy the ability to see old cities that were built on rivers. I always think it's an interesting way to see them, is from that perspective. In this case, if we're looking downriver, and basically right around that bend, not more than another half mile beyond the furthest point we can see is the ocean. So this is pretty close to the coast where we are here. Okay, this is just a couple other photos. This was inside of an old, I think basically the equivalent of the Chamber of Commerce building from 200 years ago. But this is to knock your socks off room to stand inside of that building. And again, we're kind of getting to the end, and some of these were just photos we kind of threw in here in no particular order. One of the things I love about Portugal, it's true in Lisbon, it's true in Porto, is just tiles. It's such a defining feature in many ways of your experience. Both cities are wonderful just to walk down these little lanes, and all the buildings, or the vast majority of buildings, are covered in these tiles. And I feel like you never see the same pattern, the same distinct look a second time. They're all very unique, and it's just one of the small joys of Portugal. You can see just the whole side of a building is just nothing but these fake tile.
And they're beautiful the way they glint up, the sun shines on them and they shine back at you, and they just really they make the city come alive. It's just beautiful. Yeah.
As Christine knows all too well, probably my favorite thing about going to a new city is I like to walk. We call them urban death hikes, but this is if you're into urban death hiking, this is a great place to do it.
Someone had asked on the chat if they were locally made, and are they still locally made? They were made in Portugal, and there's a terrible thing that's happening if they're at eye level or hand level, people are actually ripping them off of buildings. So that's truly a tragedy. And if you're a tourist and you go to Portugal, do not buy old tile because you're just encouraging people to steal these things.
And I think this is the very last slide. This was just a unique building we saw as we were walking around. And I like the sort of junk art giant bunny on the corner of this building. Caught my attention.
Yeah, we love artwork when we're traveling.
Yeah. So that
actually what's going on there, the bunny is actually hiding the fact that is a giant boulder on the corner of that building, and the building was built around that piece of rock. So that's what's actually going on there.
You read the guide more than I did.
Well, I looked at the building a little closer. I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it's actually a big boulder. But yeah, let's see.
So
I was going to look at the questions a little bit more. Let's see. Someone asked about port wine? Let me get this to where I can see it. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see all these. Does the port taste different than what we get here? No, I mean, we get good port here. It's all very sweet wine, and it's really good. They have more varieties over there.
That said, it always tastes better when you're there. I don't know why. When we were in Italy, I thought the Chianti somehow tasted better there. When we've been in Bordeaux, seems like the wine tasted better there. Maybe it's just my just the specialness of being somewhere, but
right. Someone asked if we speak Spanish, a little tiny bit, poquito or pequeño. We know enough to get along, and I will tell you that it was much easier ordering food in Portugal than Spain, because in Portugal they don't expect you to speak Portuguese, and they have everything in multiple languages, so much easier to get along there in your own language, just about whatever that is. And they had people, when we were eating in restaurants, our waiters and waitresses were literally from all over the world when we were in Portugal. So it's very cosmopolitan that way over there, more so I felt like than in Spain, but it's just because I saw that in Portugal. It might be the same way in Spain.
And this was a very, very unscientific impression, but the food definitely was better in Portugal. Am I correct? Would you agree? But maybe it's where we were eating, but there was a lot more creativity, I thought, to what we were eating. I don't know.
Great food. Yeah, great food in Portugal. And in the Canary Islands, someone asked if it's an international dark sky site, and it is. It's actually one of the best places in the world to see the stars. And every night, just about, they take tourists up into the mountains and have these stargazing trips with guides that tell you what you're looking at. And it's definitely one of the best places to see the dark sky. That's why they have that observation area and all that equipment up there so they can see the sky.
Yeah. We definitely, the Canary Islands have been kind of an add-on at the very end, right before we left. We booked our flights there. It had not been our intention to go there originally, but after the week that we were there, we were giving serious consideration to changing our flights to spend a majority of our trip there. We didn't, but it was definitely compelling enough, knowing that there were another 5 islands that it was clear that they also had unique, different, interesting things to see. So it's definitely on our radar, place we would go back to and explore more.
Someone asked if they were aquatic iguanas. I don't think so. It's not that type of place.
Yeah, it wasn't like the
Um,
Galapagos.
Someone asked if we went to the museums in Madrid. We did go to the Prado. I
We
think,
have to? You're obligated, I think.
yeah, we just really love the Prado. And thank you, I think, to Laura or Star, whoever brought this slide up about the oyster roast. We really are looking forward to seeing everyone at February 27th at our auction and oyster roast. It's out at Bowen's Island again. And we are going to have, of course, oysters. We're going to have veggie hot dogs. Ben and Jerry's ice cream is going to be there again. Lime and the Coconuts are going to share their musical creativity with us. Can't wait for that. Lots of potluck chili. We do need volunteers. If you would like to make chili or serve ice cream or serve beer, let us know. Ben Mack is our volunteer chair this year. His email is on the screen there. You can email any one of us that you know as well, and we'll set you up. And we could always use items donated for the auction. We've got some great items, everything from restaurant meals to plays and what else, Laura? Artwork, trips. So lots of good stuff to come and bid on and have fun. So. All right. Thank you, Alec, Bill, Yvonne. Thank you all. Thank you, Star and Laura, for doing the behind the scenes IT stuff tonight and helping us all out with that. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who came. We just really, really appreciate seeing you again. It's been a great time, and we're looking forward to having more good times together and seeing each other again very soon, getting out there and enjoying these wild places.
Thanks for all your work, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great meeting. Good to see everybody.
Hey, Terry. Hey.
Mhm.
All
And
right. Well, how are you doing, Brantley?
Doing great. Gonna retire the end of this year.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good for you. You definitely earned it.
thanks.
Yeah. You got retirement plans?
New Zealand, Hawaii, Spain, all those places.
Well, if you have any questions about Spain,
Yeah,
we've got the information.
yeah. Portugal sounds really cool. Yeah.
Oh, loved it. And we also went up into the mountains of this place called Pineda Garras.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole national, it's a national park. It's huge. Lots of really well thought out trails up there. It's easy to get around. One of the trails we were on had a bunch of cows with those bells. It was really, really nice. Lots of cascades or waterfalls.
Yeah. I think y'all are real brave to go climbing around during the COVID.
Well, it was a dip in COVID, and their numbers were going down, and our numbers were down, and we had already had our vaccines.
Yeah.
So we were feeling pretty brave.
Yeah.
Oh, Star's ready to go. Okay.
All right. Well, good night.
All right.
Good to see y'all.
See ya.
Bye. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Night.
Thank